is not just a technical team, it is a call to confront one of the most defining challenges of our current generation. Africa today stands at a crossroads. On the one hand, we are witnessing commendable progress in infrastructure development, in social investments, and digital transformation. According to the African Development Bank, Africa needs 130 billion to 170 billion US dollars annually to be able to bridge the infrastructure gap. And yet access to affordable long-term finance continues to remain elusive for most African countries. On the other hand, we are burdened by escalating debt service obligations. And in 2024 alone, African countries had to spend over $90 billion to service their debts. And this is almost double the amount of money that Africa receives in foreign aid from outside the continent. This is also more than the combined annual public spending on health and education in many of our countries. Recent data from the IMF reveals that 22 African countries are either in or at risk of debt distress. The average public debt to GDP ratio in sub-Saharan Africa is projected to exceed 60% in 2025. And this is up from about 40% 10 years ago. Ghana, like many of our peers and neighbors, has had to undergo a very painful restructuring exercise to restore macroeconomic stability and rebuild investor confidence. And so who better to speak on this theme than the Republic of Ghana? These facts are stark reminders that while debt can be a catalyst for transformation, it can also be the source of fiscal fragility and lost sovereignty if it is not well managed. And now I'll give you a reflection and lessons on Ghana's journey in debt restructuring. Ghana's debt history is emblematic of the broader African experience. In the early 2000s, under the HIPC and MDRI initiatives, Ghana was able to slash its debt to GDP ratio from over 100% to under 30%. This unlocked significant fiscal space and allowed for investment in education, roads, and the health sector. Between 2006 and 2015, successive governments, including mine, that's in my first coming, strategically combined concessional and non-concessional financing to accelerate infrastructure development and social inclusion. Under my administration in 2015, Ghana entered into an IMF-supported extended credit facility program to restore fiscal discipline, particularly in the energy sector. However, in the years that followed, in a splurge of unrestrained borrowing, Ghana's debt to GDP ratio went from as low as 56.3% in 2016 to a peak of 90.7% in 2022. We faced surging borrowing costs and currency depreciation. And by 2023, interest payments alone consumed 47% of total government revenue, a level described by the World Bank as fiscally unsustainable. In 2024, through constructive engagement under the G20 Common Framework, Ghana reached a $5.4 billion debt restructuring deal with our bilateral creditors, providing essential breathing room. But the path to recovery continues to remain complex. Ghana's experience offers three key lessons. One, that timely and transparent engagement with the creditors matter. Delays only deepen the crisis. Then two, multilateral support must be flexible and must be aligned with our domestic development priorities. And 3, sustainable debt is not just about debt to GDP ratio. It is about what the debt is used to finance and the governance that underpins that debt. And here, we leaders of Africa must take some responsibility for the debt trap in which our countries find themselves. In Ghana, over the last several years, there was an acceleration of debt accumulation, much of it going into budget support and consumption expenditure, and in a very poor governance environment. And so, what is the new debt agenda for Africa? If we're to shift from managing debt crisis to unlocking debt as a tool for development, then Africa must adopt a new public debt management agenda that is rooted in 3 foundational pillars. And the first one is transparency and accountability. Debt should serve the people, and this means strengthening parliamentary oversight, enhancing public debt audits, and promoting open budget systems. According to the IMF, less than 40% of African countries publish detailed debt reports. This must change. The second is productive, efficient, and responsible borrowing. Borrowing must be tied to high-impact projects that deliver tangible returns to our people. In Ghana, we're prioritizing value-added agriculture, renewable energy, road infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and health and education sectors. All these sectors yield multiplier effects in jobs, exports, and innovation. And the third is regional solidarity and global financial reform, the third pillar. And with this, Africa must speak with one voice to push for a fairer global financial rules. Credit rating agencies must adopt methodologies that reflect the structural reforms and the growth potential of African economies, not just penalize us for volatility that we did not create. Let us also build the capacity of African financial institutions such as the African Development Bank, the Afrexim Bank, the AFC, and the proposed African Monetary Fund to offer concessional financing tailored to Africa's development reality. So what is working and what must change? And in this I say innovation must guide our debt strategy. And I think Mr. Vilakazi and those who spoke before me spoke about it, Mr. Gatete. Debt for climate swaps can help countries finance resilience while easing repayment pressures. And Barbados has led the way in this, and Africa should learn and follow suit. Green and blue bonds must be scaled up across the continent to finance environmental protection, clean energy, and sustainable agriculture. Ghana is exploring these options alongside broadening the tax base, digitizing revenue collection, and enhancing domestic capital markets to reduce dependency on external borrowing. However, we must also acknowledge what is not working. And what is not working, the first is the G20 Common Framework remains slow and creditor-driven. Of the 5 African countries that applied, only 3 have seen material progress under this framework. The next is vulture funds and aggressive litigation undermines good faith and restructuring efforts. And the third is SGR reallocation remains far below the $100 billion pledged for Africa. These issues demand urgent multilateral reform, and Africa's voice must be heard at the table. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana is committed to rebuilding its fiscal buffers, strengthening our institutions, and promoting inclusive growth. But our fiscal consolidation must not come at the cost of social protection. And so our strategy includes 3 of the following. 1, protecting investments in education, youth empowerment, and rural development. 2, enhancing debt transparency through the establishment of an independent fiscal council. And 3, expanding the role of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund to crowd in private capital. Our goal is not just to reduce our debts, it is to transform our economy. Debts must not erode our dignity